Good afternoon, and welcome to Sunday Brunch with Higher Heights. I'm Glynda Carr, and I'm so glad you're spending some of your Sunday with us. Today is special for a couple of reasons. First, it is International Women's Day, a moment recognized around the world to celebrate the achievements of women and recommit ourselves to the work of equality, justice, and leadership. And on a personal note, y'all, it's my birthday. Something about being born on International Women's Day tickles me every year, but inspires me to continue to do the work. So I'm grateful that you're celebrating both with us, with this incredible community of Black women leaders, voters, organizers, and change makers. Before we get started, we have a short video to kick us off in honor of International Women's Day. And while you're watching, I have 3 birthday wishes. 1, please consider making a contribution to Higher Heights for America today in celebration of International Women's Day to invest in our work to help Black women to vote, run, win, and lead, and to celebrate my birthday. 2nd, consider inviting your crew to be part of Higher Heights Boot Camp. It's happening on March 21st and 22nd, and signups are still available, but don't miss your spot. And finally, the team has created a birthday card for me. So take a moment and sign my birthday card and give me a little shout out for my birthday today. So let's take a look at the video.
This International Women's Day, we celebrate the excellence, courage, and leadership of Black women in American politics. Our heroines, our trailblazers, our defenders of democracy. We stand on the shoulders of your legacies. Behind every race, behind every campaign, behind every win and every loss, there was a fight you endured. A fight for representation, a fight for justice, a fight for a democracy that works for all of us. And for that, we thank you. You are our light. You are our living history, and you are our hope. Because when Black women lead, our cities, our communities, our country are better for it.
All right, welcome back. And thank you to everyone who dropped a birthday wish in the chat. And drop where you're watching from today as well. Today's show is packed. We'll be breaking down the big political stories of the week. Congresswoman Sydney Callagher Dove from California joins us to talk about the developments, including Iran and the latest headlines surrounding Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem's being let go by the administration. Then we will take a deeper dive and look at the aftermath of the Texas Senate primary and the race involving Jasmine Crockett with 2 leading scholars of Black women in politics, Dr. Nadia E. Browne of Georgetown University and Dr. Christine M. Slaughter of Boston University. And finally, we will hear directly from an on-the-ground expert in Texas, Dr. Carla Braley, former vice chair of the Texas Democratic Party, former candidate for lieutenant governor, and political science professor and sociology professor here in Texas, who will break down what happened in Texas primary and what comes next. But before then, this week, we are celebrating the commemoration of Bloody Sunday, March 7th, in Selma, when 600 marchers crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge with John Lewis and were attacked. Today at 2:30, Black leaders and our allies from across the country and the world will be walking across the bridge in commemoration. But before we get started, this is our week in the news.
Welcome back to your weekly rundown. This week, there was no shortage of news and headlines. Let's jump in. U.S.-Israeli strikes continue across Iran as the war widens, prompting the country's retaliation with missiles and drones targeting nearby countries. Efforts to constrain the conflict stalled after Congress failed to pass a resolution limiting Trump's ability to carry out further military action. Meanwhile, the president told reporters he should play a direct role in selecting Iran's next leader. Thousands of Americans are now stranded in the Middle East, drawing sharp criticism of the Trump administration's lack of help in evacuating. Since the attacks began, more than 1,000 people in Iran and 6 U.S. service members have been killed. Kristi Noem is out as Secretary of Homeland Security. Trump has nominated Oklahoma Senator Markwayne Mullin to replace her. Noem will instead serve as Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, part of the administration's new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere. The move comes after Noem faced tough questions at a congressional hearing this week over a costly ad campaign, contracts, spending, immigration enforcement tactics, FEMA relief, and numerous calls for her resignation. She is the first cabinet secretary to be ousted in Trump's second term. On Tuesday, voters in Texas, Arkansas, and North Carolina headed to the polls, kicking off the road to the 2026 midterm elections. Our endorsed candidate, Representative Jasmine Crockett, made a strong showing, garnering over 1 million votes. The race was later called for Representative James Tellerico, who advances to the general election. There was good news out of North Carolina. Endorsed candidates Representative Alma Adams and Representative Valerie Foushee are both moving on to the general. And in Texas, Democrats Al Green and Christian Menefee are headed to a runoff. We'll be watching Illinois next on March 17th. The conflict in Iran has raised concerns about rising U.S. gas prices. Trump downplayed the potential surge, saying the military operation was his priority and that he was not worried about higher prices at the pump. Analysts say sustained increases in gas prices could hurt Republicans in November's midterm elections, when control of Congress is at stake. On Wednesday, Spain denied the White House's assertion that it had agreed to cooperate with American military operations in Iran, reiterating its earlier refusal. "Our position has been very clear from day one," said Defense Minister Margarita Robles. Trump threatened to cut off all trade after the Spanish government refused to allow U.S. forces to access 2 jointly operated military bases in the country. The House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi over her role in the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Republican Representative Nancy Mace prompted the move, and the motion passed with bipartisan support 24-19. The vote marks the latest step in the committee's probe, as frustration over Bondi's handling of the release has drawn widespread criticism. House Democrats have gone even further, filing articles of impeachment against her on Thursday. On Thursday, Texas Representative Tony Gonzalez announced he would drop his re-election bid after admitting to an affair with a staffer who later died by suicide. A number of Republicans had been calling for him to withdraw, and the House Ethics Committee announced Wednesday it would open an investigation. He will serve out the rest of his term. A Georgia jury found Colin Gray guilty in connection with the 2024 mass shooting allegedly carried out by his son, a case that has tested the limits of parental responsibility. Colt Gray is accused of gunning down 2 classmates and 2 teachers using an AR-15 style rifle that his father gifted him, according to prosecutors. They also accused Colin of ignoring warning signs of his son's potential violence and his mental health. The father faces a maximum of 180 years in prison. It's official. Higher Heights PAC-endorsed candidate Keisha Lance Bottoms is the first Democrat to qualify for Georgia's governor race and will face her opponents in May during the Democratic primary. If elected, she would make history as the first Black woman governor in the United States. At 105 years old, Virginia Dillard proudly walked into her polling place to cast her ballot in Texas's primary election. She was only 4 months when the 19th Amendment passed, giving women the right to vote. However, Dillard wouldn't cast her first vote until she was in her 50s. Living through this, she would instill the importance of voting in her children at an early age. The young voters need to know the future belongs to them, she said. That's all, or should I say enough for this week. Take care of yourself. Until next time.
It has been a busy week in politics, both here, at home, and around the world. We saw major developments internationally, including tensions involving Iran. At the same time, there were new headlines surrounding Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, raising questions about policy and her leadership at the department. To help us unpack some of these issues, we are joined by Congresswoman Sidney Callagher-Dove of California's 37th District. She's going to be talking with our very own Aprill Turner, Executive Vice President, for a conversation about what we should be paying attention to now. But before we go to that, take a look at this week's video.
Secretary Noem, at any time during your tenure as Director of Department of Homeland Security, have you had sexual relations with Corey Lewandowski?
Mr. Chairman, I am shocked that we're going down and peddling tabloid garbage in this committee today.
Reclaiming
and
my
ma'am,
time.
one thing that I would tell you is that he is a special government employee who works for the White House. There are thousands of them in the federal government.
So reclaiming
and
my
is an
time,
advisor
Secretary, it is
and has
okay for
no,
you to be
no
offended
authority
by
to
the
be
question.
making any
It is
decisions.
okay for you to
has
be
no
offended
authority
by the
to
question.
be making
But it is
decisions
also
and
a
putting
real
up your
question.
position. So what I would say
And
to
you should be able to
is
answer
that
the
what we do
question
at the Department of Homeland
clearly
Security every single
and without
day,
any hesitation.
every single day is to protect
if
this
someone
country
is
and
asking
to make
if
decisions.
you or any federal official is sleeping with their subordinate, that should be the easiest. You should be wanting to answer that question.
Is garbage?
Because it is not about
It is
your sex
offensive
life.
that you have brought
it is
that up.
about your
So
judgment.
that kind of
Hello, Congresswoman. Welcome back to Sunday Brunch. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always good to be here with you.
Thank you. Well, as always, it's a busy week in Washington. Lots happened, and we wanted to invite you on this week because you serve on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and we're in a moment of global tensions escalating. And can you just break down a bit for our audience the latest in Washington and what's happening right now with the conflict in Iran, and what concerns you most about that?
Well, it is a war that we did not authorize, so that's important to remind folks. And it's also important to remind people that the only government entity that can authorize the United States going to war is Congress. So this week we had a vote on a war powers resolution that would reaffirm that Congress is the only body that can declare war. And unfortunately, that resolution failed. 212 members voted for it. So it does show you that the country is divided, and this president does not have a unified country saying go into this war. It's also really important for folks to know that we never had discussions about why we were doing this. So Congress never had any briefings before. There were no hearings before where we were given intelligence to justify this conflict, this war. And I think that's really important because we are using taxpayer dollars and we are sending American men and women overseas to fight in a war, potentially sacrificing their lives. So I think if those two things are going to happen, and those are big things, then we should have evidence that we're able to share with the American people to justify why we would sacrifice dollars and lives for a war.
No, thank you for that. And I know, this issue hits personally for you, hits personally for all of us. I had a chance to see you early in the morning on CNN, and you talked about your nephew graduating from the Marines and, not being able to justify having a rationale for what's happening, to someone like your nephew. Can you just talk a bit about your personal connection and how that shapes your approach and how things are shaking out on Capitol Hill right now?
Yeah, I remember when I had dinner with him and he talked about joining the Marines. And he was so excited about the training that he was in and what he was learning and why he was doing it, right? To be able to see the world, to get a good education, that was really important to him. And then he said, hey, I'm graduating this week. That's so exciting. And then we go to war. And I'm thinking, wow, if he graduates And then he gets his papers saying that he has to go into this. And then he calls me up and says, hey, Auntie, you're in Congress. So tell me again why we're doing this, why I'm being sent here. I wouldn't have any answers to those questions that would sit right with me or with him or his mother. And 6 American lives have already been lost, have already been sacrificed. And we have a president who said, oh, we won't have any troops on the ground. Now we might have troops on the ground. Oh, it's going to take 4 weeks. Oh, we don't know how long it's going to take. Oh, it was about regime change. Oh, I don't really care if they have a democracy. Oh, lives are going to get lost. Yeah, it's just going to happen. This cavalier attitude when you're dealing with people's lives, people's sons, people's nephews, the American people deserve more, you know?
No, absolutely. And I know people have lots of concerns about that. We're seeing, we're in this place of scattered media. People are looking for information, looking for truth. We're seeing that there are Americans stranded over there that they can't get back. What can we expect to happen next? Like, what is the next step of this?
That's a question. I don't even really know the answer to that. What I can tell you, though, I can tell you a few things. I can tell you that we've been told from Republicans that they don't plan to hold hearings on Iran for a long time. We've been told that the information we're going to get is going to come from a classified briefing. People are not under oath then. It's not information that can be shared. They don't have to be transparent with the American people. We have not been given any information on how much this is going to cost. There is a cost tracker out there that says it could cost us $1 billion a day. So people should know that this administration is spending money on bombs and munitions instead of giving you your health care subsidies. What else should we know? We should know that no one has seen the intelligence director, Tulsi Gabbard. This is the person who has intelligence, who has information on why we should be doing the things that we are doing, right? The things that are making us unsafe and what we can do to keep ourselves safe. I think all of those are very important bits of information when you're trying to hold your country accountable about what they're doing with your money and your sons and daughters' lives.
No, absolutely. And thank you for shedding light on that. I do want to shift focus a little bit. There's some major headlines made this week. We're all looking like, wow, look at this hearing. When in the House Judiciary Hearing Committee, you asked Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem about potential conflicts of interest involving her staffer, Corey Lewandowski. That has been framed, some have framed it as controversial. Obviously, many of us feel that it was needed to ask that question. Can you talk a bit about that hearing and what happened and like walking the line of asking tough questions, but also making sure that we're holding our government leaders accountable?
So I'm just going to say this because I'm talking to higher heights. Black women always are the ones that kind of step into it and do the work that no one else really wants to do. Real talk. And the other real talk is, and this was in, the articles in the newspapers. This is something that everyone was talking about and people know, but nobody wanted to say. So why don't you want to say? Because at the crux of the issue is you have a person who is the head of the Department of Homeland Security. There are 260,000 people that work under the Homeland Security Department. And they deserve a leader who is credible, who is exercising clear and sound judgment, who is taking accountabilities for their decisions. Why? Because you have cities that are still trying to get their FEMA money. How come they're not? Who's making the decision about if these cities are getting their money or not? Why? Because you have a department that spent $220 million on an ad campaign, basically profiling the director of Homeland Security. It hasn't netted anything that's keeping Americans safer. Why? Because when we're having our health care cut, we see that this person has also purchased a $70 million luxury jet, supposedly using this for deportations. But I have never seen a photo of a deportee drinking a martini and watching a TV in a luxury jet. In my mind, these are examples of waste, fraud, and abuse, and a disrespect towards the American people. My question is about holding somebody accountable. My question was about the use of sound judgment. My question was about national security and conflicts of interest. And I want to know that a leader that I'm entrusting my security with and my dollars with is doing everything they can to not have any conflicts of interest mess with their judgment. So it's a real question, an uncomfortable question, maybe even an offensive question, but a simple question, a clear question, and one that speaks to the heart of the issues that we are seeing, the catastrophes, okay, the failures, not just the issues, the catastrophes and failures that we were seeing coming out of this Department of Homeland Security.
And no, thank you so much. Sometimes we look at this stuff and we're like, is this really happening? So no, thank you. The political theater of it all, that's actually reality. So we're happy to have you in place to ask those questions. And then, obviously through some social media posts, we see that there will be a replacement at the end of the month in Senator Mullen. Do we have any thoughts about what to expect there? Doesn't seem to be a real vetting process of who just got next. So that just what it's going to be.
So first I'll say that Sister Girl might have perjured herself, at least in her Senate hearing. So now there's talk about bringing her back and next steps on that, because she said some things that didn't quite, the math wasn't mathing with regards to her responses. So that's the one. The second is, who got next? This Senator Mullen, who has no law enforcement experience, no military experience, no experience with crisis management. Word on the street is Trump likes looking at him on the TV and thinks he's charismatic, so okay. But what we know for sure is we need somebody who is going to come before us and answer the questions that we are asking on behalf of our constituents. And I want to remind you that Kristi Noem, that was the first time that Kristi Noem had showed up in front of us in House Judiciary Committee, okay? That is unacceptable. So girlfriend should have known that we were going to come with the receipts and we were going to be unhappy. So I hope that Mullen takes a cue and says, well, I have to have a different kind of relationship with these people who are responsible for appropriating funds. I have to have a different relationship with these people who are taking their oversight responsibilities seriously. So we're going to see what's happening. We're going to see what's going to happen with him. I don't know this man. I know he wanted to tussle with somebody in a Senate hearing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You're a wild boy.
No, thank you for shedding light on that. We're so excited to have you here on Sunday Brunch. I'm going to shift topics again. I want to pack it all in a short time. We know that Friday we put to rest a legend, Jesse Jackson Sr. And I saw your post, which really resonated with me, on Instagram about you growing up in Chicago and sitting down to watch his convention speech and what that meant to you. I was somewhere in Clearwater, Florida around that time. My father sat me down and I watched that speech. And then one of the few times I saw my father ever cry in life. And I was like, what are we crying about? I was probably like 7 or 8 and trying to understand it all. But I know that I recently rewatched that speech and it had a profound impact on me and probably why I do what I do now. And so we really thank him. And I just want to hear more about your reflections about Reverend Jackson.
He's an icon and a legend, and he was before his time, and to think about the courage that it took for a black man to know that he would not ever become president, but to have the courage to run and talk about the issues that he knew and still knows that everyone else is talking about and wanting some daylight on. It was amazing. You come from Chicago, and so you know about Operation Push and the Rainbow Coalition, and you grow up he's your hometown hero. And then your grandmother says, tonight at 8 o'clock, you're going to sit down in front of this TV and you're going to listen to this man. You're going to listen to this man share some truth and shine light on who we are as a people, as our struggle. Shine light on our struggle and remind us that we are unified as the United States of America, and we can find a way to work together, live together, prosper together, dream together, fight together, protect this country together. That was what it was about. And she did cry. And I was like, Nana, crying is a bad thing. And she was like, oh no, child, these are tears of glory and joy that this man is sharing his goodness and his hope with us. And so, Nana, is this really going to happen? Can he become president? Oh, no, child. He will not. But that's not why we're watching. We are watching to be part of this moment because it is historic. And I will forever be grateful. I will forever be grateful to Jesse Jackson for what he's done, not just for us, not just for Black people here, but across the world. I have traveled the world because I'm on foreign affairs, and I have met with Afro-descendants who have cried, talking about how Jesse Jackson came to their community, their organization, in their country, and helped them in their movement. He is a blessing. He is a blessing, and it is right that we celebrate him.
Thank you for that beautiful reflection. And before we let you go, I will tell you that Sunday Brunch audience, Higher Heights, we love watching you on Instagram. Thank you for being a truth teller. Thank you for telling how it is. I mean, I go to you for everything. Like, what are your thoughts on State of the Union or BAFTA or whatever you're talking about for the day? So thank you. And we have at the end of the show a video of the week. You are often our video of the week. We're like, you help us frame things. So we appreciate that. Can you just talk to us and leave us with what is concerning you most? What is happening next in Washington? What are the things that our audience should be looking at in coming weeks?
I hope everyone starts keeping their literal receipts. I don't know about y'all, but I don't really have a lot of cash on me. Everything is with the card, but we got to do better. Me too, because the shits is getting more expensive. The gas is going up. The cost of groceries are going up. Jobs are going down. 92,000 jobs lost, right? And we have to hold this administration accountable, because at the end of the day, why is it costing us more when we're feeling like we're getting less? And how do we stay unified in that message of accountability and not to get distracted? Because, you know, folks are trying to divide us. And they're also trying to suppress our vote, right? And suppress our hunger for justice by turning us against one another, even within the Black community. So I'm hoping that we will save our receipts and we will stay focused on the thing that matters. And there's some bans. It's that money, because that's about safety and security and wealth building, right? And future building. And lean into that for each and every election that comes your way and each and every candidate that comes your way.
Thank you so much for that final thought. As always, we enjoy having you at Sunday Brunch, Congresswoman. I'm going to send things back to Glynda. Thank you.
Thanks.
Always great to see Congresswoman Callagher. Dove, we now turn to one of the biggest political stories of the week. The Texas U.S. Senate primary drew national attention, especially the race involving Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Lots of conversation post-primary for us to unpack all what happened in the broader political landscape. Aprill Turner will be speaking to two leading scholars on Black women's political leadership, Nadia E. Browne of Georgetown University and Christine Slaughter of Boston University.
And Nadia and Christine, welcome to Sunday Brunch. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So we're excited about having you on the show. Lots to talk about. It was a big day on Tuesday in Texas. Of course, Jasmine Crockett ran for Senate. Unfortunately, she did not advance to the general election, but there's lots of Monday morning quarterbacking about what happened in the aftermath of that race. And from your perspective as scholars who study race, gender, political behavior, can you talk to us a bit about that race, what stands out, and what unfolded on Tuesday?
Well, the first thing we want to mention is that Jasmine Crockett should be commended. She ran this race without being asked. She put her name forward. She recognized that there was a need that her constituents had that were not being met by the current Senate leadership. And she decided that she would be an answer to that. And so while she was not successful, she is a role model for so many other Black women who are thinking about being a candidate for elected office, but who might think they need to be asked in order to go ahead and file the paperwork and go ahead and run. But that's clearly not what we saw play out. So we saw Jasmine Crockett again, who was not successful, but was not deterred. And I think that is the message we want to walk away with.
Absolutely. Any thoughts to add, Christine?
Yeah, and I think what's important is that what happens next is really the next important piece for Congresswoman Crockett. So how she rebounds from this loss and continues to share her message and her vision of progressive politics, and kind of knowing that Black women voters support her nationwide, even including those outside of the state of Texas, I think it is paramount. So like Nadia said, she's an inspiration to us all, especially like displaying her political ambition, running for a higher political office. However, it's what she does next, I think that's most important. And I think that that's what we have our eyes on.
No, thanks so much for that. And, in talking to different people in political circles, there are, again, all the criticisms, like they should have had more TV buys. They should have done this. We should have done that. We all know it's political science for a reason. You study it and you might have to shift course sometimes, but you're testing out some things sometimes. Can you talk to us just about this race from the lens of intersectionality and from race and gender, and especially this is something that is interests me. I don't think you can look at this race just as Jasmine Crockett. When I think about this race, I think about Sherry Beasley in North Carolina, who was unable to break through statewide. I think about Val Demings in Florida, who was unable to break through statewide. Think about Stacey Abrams in Georgia, who ran twice and came close. And just in the context of Black women and Black women candidates.
Oh, you're exactly right to point out that we have not had a Black woman state executive. So there's never been a Black woman to serve as governor. It's particularly difficult because of racism and sexism and all of the layered, baked in institutional and structural biases that will enable Black women to win even a Senate race, right? So right now we have had 5 Black women serving in the Senate. 1 has been appointed. We're living right now in a historical moment where there's 2 Black women serving in tandem, right? So we've been in this country, the country has been in existence for 250 years, and we're only saying now we've had 2 Black women in the Senate at the same time. And so what this speaks to is challenges with Black women's fundraising, because populations do not believe that they can represent broad issues outside of just very particularized, racialized, or gendered issues. There's also stereotypes and these kind of biases that voters think about, whether explicitly or implicitly, that prevent them from wanting to cast a ballot for Black women. And then lastly, there's a pipeline issue. In order to run for statewide elected office, you have to have a certain level of skills, have backing and networks, and Black women oftentimes don't have that at the same rate as their counterparts.
And I just want to speak to what Congresswoman Crockett did have, which was that she did have the endorsement from Vice President Harris that came in on Friday, and she did have Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley as well as Sister Senator Angela Brooks campaigning for her in Texas. So what we see when we think about Black women state legislators or Black women politicians is that there is a network that expands not just those within their state, but those nationwide. So we saw that while she may not have had the same fundraising support, and again, this is the most expensive primary that happened in American history for a Senate seat, that she did have support from very pivotal, important Black women who had served as senators and are also very popular as congresswomen.
And that's what the research shows us, right? Yeah. Is that Black women rely on sister networks in order to advance in politics. And so Jasmine Crockett had the support of those sister networks, but what sister networks can't overcome are these institutional and structural biases. So they were able to buoy her to a certain level, but that doesn't disregard centuries of racism and sexism.
No, thank you so much for breaking that down and mentioning that. And I do think, and I mentioned those previous races that happened in previous cycles, because I think every time this happens, we learn a little bit more to be able to crack through whatever this wall is. And even looking ahead, in a few weeks, we'll be having primaries in Illinois. We have on the ballot there, 2 Black women vying for Senate, Julia Stratton, the Lieutenant Governor of Illinois, as well as Robin Kelly, who's a member of Congress there. And as we proceed toward November, can you just give us an overall analysis of what do we think, given the structural barriers that we discussed and the racism, the misogyny, what are the takeaways that we could take away from this going into March 17th and other races? And how do we apply this? Like, what can we do to help alleviate some of these barriers?
I think what's important is always having a strong and positive message about Black women candidates running for office. So we know that Black women voters and Black women candidates often face those constraints about electability. Is she capable of being elected? Is she capable of serving? And I think what we see from the two women that are running in Illinois is that they have already the both executive and legislative experience that will make them competitive for the race. So it's very much shaping that narrative around this person has a background that is experienced, and they are more than capable of governing within the Senate. So I think really amplifying those messages are most important. But also, I think what we saw in Texas is that we must be very clear about what the electoral rules are that are shaping participation in primaries. So, like Congresswoman Crockett pointed out, that many people were unprepared on election day with the right materials in order to cast their ballots. And it's having those local civic organizations very much share and propagate the message of how to be informed. Now, people will say, oh, well, that's Texas, but this is nationwide. So we know within the America that we live in today, perhaps there are barriers to participation that need to be overcome. So it's important, one, to have those messages about the candidates, but also to prepare the voters for what that experience is on election day.
And to add about the messages that the candidates give out, our forthcoming research says that Black women voters are really excited to support Black women candidates, but those Black women candidates have to earn their vote, right? And so it's more beyond just, I want to be able to have a senator or a congressperson look like me. I want to know who she is, where she stands on the issue, and I want her to court me and my vote. So not taking Black women for granted. I think this is something that, as we're working on this research project, something that is a big misnomer in political science research is that Black women are just so happy to support a Black woman. And we know that that's not the case, right? That Black women are very smart voters who know what the policy issues are that they care about, and they want candidates to come and talk to them. And so it's imperative that Black women candidates go speak to the communities, don't take anyone for granted, and work really hard to earn the vote of all constituents. And the ones that look like you often want to hear from you too.
Yeah. I'm so happy that you said that. Obviously, Tuesday was our start of our big primary season, and there's so many lessons to take away, and especially for voters. And we're seeing a little bit of the playbook as we head to November. We saw the voter suppression that happened in Dallas, and definitely I received the message for us to be informed voters, for us to take things seriously, for us to understand all the things that are going on around us, because they're definitely going to be using some tools to make sure that they block that access and block our votes. So thank you for sharing that. I want to shift gears a little bit, and I had the opportunity to read a great article that you all both wrote in December, co-wrote together, published by the Brookings Institute, and you revisit the story of Rosa Parks and remind us that the Montgomery bus boycott was much more than what meets the eye, that it brought together Black women organizers, and you described it as a bridge, women as bridge leaders from grassroots communities to larger movements. And when I was reading the article that you all wrote, we're going to drop it in the chat for our audience. I was thinking a bit about just what's happening current day as far as Black women, our civic engagement after the 2024 election. There's that picture of us sitting by, sipping coffee as everything smolders around us. Yes, on the beam, and the joke that we're resting. And we have found that Black women are not resting. We're definitely continuing to carry the mantle and continuing to carry things forward. And I just want to talk a bit about the article that you wrote in December about Rosa Parks, about this bridge leader that you spoke about, and also just about how that it impacts this current moment and how that relates to what you see as far as Black women in our organizing.
Thank you for reading the article and engaging with our work. That's such an honor. And so what we wanted to do for the anniversary of Rosa Parks' first sit-in and the Montgomery bus boycott is place Rosa Parks in context, right? So often we know in Black History Month and Women's History Month, we want to look at this one sole figure and say this person has done something monumental on their own. And we want to, aspire to be like this person or take inspiration from that person. And while Rosa Parks is definitely inspirational, but we want to show that she comes from a long trajectory of Black women who are making connections to politics and policy and are putting their lives on the line, but doing so because they know that the community has their back because they are part of the community. And so, what we show in this article is that Black women's political participation, being part of a community organization, engaging in politics, is part and parcel of what it means to do community, right? And so Black women are not like some other demographic groups who see these things as concrete, different aspects. Like, I will go to a protest, or I will write a letter to a elected official, or I will run for elected office. But rather, there is a continuum in which Black women are engaging the system because they know that their struggle is not confined to one particular outlet of trying to express a desire to dismantle oppression, but rather you have to throw everything you got right at these things, but also doing so in a way that brings others with you.
And there are so many that we could name, like Rosa Parks, Septima Clark, Amelia Boynton, Myrlie Everett. Like, there are so many Black women who use their connections to community to kind of uplift their platforms for racial justice, gender justice, justice for working class people. And that's just important to keep in the tradition of Black women's civic engagement and activism, is that they are bringing the community with them. It's like this respect for civic duty, but it's also, hey, there's folks behind us, and these are connections that we've built in communities that we've been a part of, that perhaps it doesn't raise to the top of the platform, but they are doing that behind the scenes organizing work that sustains movements over generations.
I'm so happy that you mentioned this, and definitely we're dropping the article in the chat, encouraging the audience to read it. Obviously, Women's History Month is International Women's Day.
Yes, yes.
So, no, thank you for uplifting all of those names. And I just wanted to, before I know our time is short, before we end, wanted to bring up one more topic. As on Friday, we, put to rest one of our great leaders, Reverend Jesse Jackson Sr. And the 19th News, which will also drop the article in the chat, wrote a great article a few weeks ago about Jesse Jackson's legacy on Black women in politics. And definitely in the article, some of our favorite sheroes, the colored girls were quoted, Leah Daughtry and Donna Brazile and Mignon Moore. The article cites that Maxine Waters co-chaired his campaigns in 84 and 88. And just wanted to talk to you both as we think about his legacy from your point of view, as scholars. Can you talk a bit about his legacy for Black women in politics and what he's left for us?
So what I think about most is that this was over 40 years ago, right? So these were young women then. Jesse Jackson gave a voice and a platform to young Black women who were untested, unproven, and believed in them. And so as professors, the best part of my job is being able to instill skills and open up young people's minds. And I think about what Jesse Jackson did, right? I'm able to touch, a couple of kids that sit in my classroom a semester, right? Jesse Jackson touched these young people's lives that went on to shape the trajectory of the Democratic Party, right? Change the rules of the Democratic Party, put people now in place that are leaders of the Democratic Party that never would have been, right? And it's so, I think, empowering for all of us, but particularly people who might think about themselves as, I'm just one person, what can I do? But Jesse Jackson poured into so many people and did so regardless of gender, regardless of their age, regardless of their experience, because you have a vision of what someone can be, right? If you open the door for them. And that's a legacy that I'm taking away. And I hope to walk in that lineage as a professor.
Yeah, ditto to what Nadia says, and I think it's tough to add on to that. But what I will say is that it's important of like building the political bench. Even I think, like Nadia said, even when folks are untested, when you see a vision in someone, or when you see someone that has the capacity to lead, being able to bring them into the side, and bring them into the fold And as many of the Black political leaders age, it's like, well, who is this next generation that rises up? And I think what the death of Jesse Jackson reveals is like, one, he brought so many folks in, and it's like, well, who is doing that work now? So I think that legacy and that question is, how do we continue to be in that spirit of lift as you climb? Which again, isn't Jesse Jackson, but that is like the ethos of Black women in politics and the sisterhood and the networks that developed this. Like, how are we continuing as we climb to bring others along with us? And I see so many organizations within that spirit, and I think it's just keeping that tradition, that ethos, that mindset of like, we are not one unit. Like, even in politics, we are multiple folks working together for a shared vision, and it's just keeping that at the fore of what we do.
No, thank you so much for saying that. And really, before I let y'all go, just because it's Women's Day, and because you all do so much, thank you for being our brilliant Black women scholars. I have to ask, this is a hard political climate for a lot of people, where people are worried. They're worried about Iran. They're worried about gas prices. They're just worried about what they're seeing in life in general. But we always have to remember here at Sunday Brunch to center wellness and joy. I just want to ask you both, what do you do in this moment to center your own wellness and joy? How are you keeping it all together?
I make intentional time. I am intentional about loving on those that love on me. Mm-hmm. And that brings me joy. I have 3 little girls, and they get kisses sometimes, whether they would like to or not. I know this is not right in the age of consent. Like, I'm your mama. I need a kiss. I need a hug. And that's one thing, but also just being really grateful of good colleagues and friends, people that offer opportunities. Like Higher Heights has always been a home to highlight the kind of research. So being able to work with and to give back and to love on those that love on me is really what's keeping me sustained during this time.
So I'm very grounded. I'm always reminded I am Teresa's daughter, Christine's granddaughter, and Amarie's great-granddaughter. So I always think about myself in the lineage of the Black women that have come before me. And I think centering myself within that narrative of their agency and their resilience is truly what keeps me grounded and optimistic that these times too shall pass, but also just being steeped in faith and other works are very helpful to me. And also great colleagues, knowing that we one platform each other. So even when there isn't, as Black women become removed from the press, still face the highest unemployment in this period, knowing that there are legacy Black organizations such as Higher Heights that are really lifting and shaping the work that Black women are doing, I think is very inspirational and keeping me grounded.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
No, we really, really appreciate that. Thank you for that note. And thank you, Dr. Nadia. Thank you, Dr. Christine. We appreciate having you. I'm going to hand it back to Glynda. Thank you.
That was such an important conversation. Understanding the broader dynamics behind these races help us understand what Black women candidates are navigating when they step onto the statewide stage. Now we're going to zoom into the state and hear from someone who has been closely connected to Texas politics for years. Joining us is Dr. Carla Braley, a fellow at Rice University's Baker's Institute, associate professor of sociology at Texas Southern University, a former candidate for statewide ballot and the former vice chair of the Texas Democratic Party. She has such a deep insight on not only the national politic, but the political landscape in Texas and what these primary results mean moving forward. Welcome so much, Carla, for your first time here at Sunday Brunch with Higher Heights.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
So, for some knows, I spend some time in Houston, and you really have a pulse not only in Houston, but also Texas. I had an opportunity to see you on the last day of early vote in Texas while we were scrambling. My brother was voting, and you were, voting. The line was literally out the door. Share a little bit about your involvement in Texas politics over the years and what stood out the most for you on the results of this past Tuesday.
Will do. First, I would like to say, after spending time talking to you, I realized that I did not have my ID. So I had to leave, and was not able to vote until E-Day, which was very unusual for me. I know the importance just for candidates to have people to vote early. It allows us to know how to move our funding. It allows us to know where we need to go and do some extra stumping to get people out. So I usually don't wait till election day, but I know and respect many of those who do it because it's like a family legacy for them. So, for the past, I don't know, 10 years or so, I have been probably engaged in every element or level of politics in Houston. I've worked with several of our past leaders, that being the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, as well as the late Congressman Sylvester Turner, primarily when he was mayor, and several of the judges, and really all throughout the state of Texas. And so for me, I really just am totally committed to the process of what can we do to turn folks out in the state of Texas. I know we have a nationwide focus, but I truly, truly believe that if we change Texas, we change the nation. And in terms of this particular season, we have so much change, I think, that we have to do. And so what stood out is that as much as many people had the dialogue, the rhetoric of Black women, stepping out, staying out, we still stood up. We still showed up to the polls like we always do. And we had, in particular this time, we actually had a Black woman on the ballot that had attempted to run a path to victory that touched many places that do not get touched in ordinary elections. And I think that's really important. Just the mere fact that her path that she took, it included urban, but it also included rural in areas like East Texas and Beaumont and Port Arthur that do not normally, not too often get candidates to really run serious paths through those particular areas. But as we've seen, we have to turn out the urban vote even vastly in much ways that we still haven't yet done in the state of Texas. But we see it was a surge in the state of Texas. It was a surge because we had open seats locally. We had competitive races, even statewide, and not just competitive races, but we had qualified candidates that everyday people knew. And many people had a dog in the fight. And I would say for many of us, I don't want to use the word dog in this context, but dog in a positive sense, that we had Jasmine. And she ran several studios, small talks, that so many of us were involved in. And I think that it showed us still what Texas can do and what we need to do, and that we still need quite a bit of funding to come through Texas. And I'm speaking as a Democrat and from the Democratic perspective, but we also see that quite a number of voters are still choosing candidates that really do not necessarily represent democracy. I mean, we had people on the ballot that actually had records, criminal records. And so people were still choosing to say yes to that. So I think we have work to do. We still have to talk to a plethora of voters out there, but yet at the same time, Black people, Black women, they got information, and we've done what we've done for so many years, and we turned out and attempted to turn out not only our families, but our communities, our village.
I think you would agree, like Jasmine's theory of change was correct, right? This is a state that nationally people have dipped their toe in and out for building like a political infrastructure and investing. She's proven actually a pathway. I would love to hear your vantage point around this narrative, like this quick narrative around she lost. She
she won. Now,
thank you.
In every race, you want to win. When I ran for lieutenant governor, I mean, it was a risk. It was a large undertaking. You never have enough infrastructure. Texas, I mean, they say Harris County is the size of Georgia, the state of Georgia. That's just one county, one city area. I mean, and so just the mere fact that she ran, the mere fact that she was willing to step away from her seat already meant that she was not running on fear. She was running on faith, which we operate in many cases in many different sectors of our lives. The mere fact she ran her own race in her own way. Even her commercials were different. And I would tell people, hey, in politics and really in anything in life, we need to be critical because you grow through critiques. You grow through criticism. But I tell people, if you can't do it, you won't do it. Be quiet, sit down, and because somebody is doing it. And we needed that in Texas. Let me tell you, I say hands down, the turnout that we experienced in the state of Texas would not have happened if Jasmine Crockett was not on the ticket. And we can, and I mean that across the board, across race, class, gender. She was willing to fight, is willing to fight. And people are looking for fighters right now. And I think that what she did, she modeled almost a pivot that the Democratic Party has to do. We can no longer, I don't want to say play fair, because yeah, we're in democracy, so we do want to be fair. That's part of our values. But we need to be fair with our pinky on the line. You remember that when you're growing up, like, don't you step on this line. And she was willing to step on the line. She was willing to be different. She was willing for some to say, you know, hey, I know you're not on my team, but in the meantime, if we could at least respect each other while we're in this primary, maybe we can come together and it won't have to take 6-7 weeks to heal in order for us to come together and run as one in the state of Texas. And as much as she's a fighter, as feisty as she can be, I think we can see even in her speech, she acknowledged, let's get to work. Not let's get to work tomorrow, not let's get to work 2 weeks. It was let's get to work. And guess what? Black women heard that, Black community heard that, and we get, once again, information. I do think, you know, and this is a hard one, Glynda, I do think at some point we need to have a conversation with the Democratic establishment. Something has to be done because we cannot have 6 weeks in when you're giving some support. We have to have an infrastructure, not just in the state of Texas, but around the nation. But, you know, for me, I'm in Texas, so I'm going to stick to Texas. Mm-hmm. And we got to have folks who are not scared to deal with Texas. California looked like Texas one time, and I think people forget that. The work that was done, now it's a pretty blue state. I mean, it has some pockets, and we have to be able to invest in Texas. And invest in Texas means that you invest in even Black candidates that are on the ballot.
Yeah. And I would say to remind people, this was the highest turnout in a Democratic primary since 2020, right? Which yes. had a bunch of, you know, different types of ways to vote in 2020. And so the notion that she overstepped, she shouldn't have run. There's a lot of work to be done around narrative building beyond elections and the way people talk about Black women candidates when they lose. She had more votes. They actually both had more votes than the last two primaries. And
absolutely, it was a presidential turnout.
Yeah. And so reminding people there's obviously a postmortem and what we could have or should have done. There's obviously work and growth to be done, but the notion that we are running towards the possibilities of our leadership is the work that needs to be done. So I would share a little bit. As I mentioned, you were a former statewide candidate. In fact, a Higher Heights endorsed candidate for lieutenant governor. But so share a little bit about, you know, from your personal experience, how people talk about and invest in Black women in general, and then obviously here in Texas.
You know, Glynda, I would like to say I would have a different story, but investment is difficult. I think it's difficult for Black candidates, but definitely for Black women. And then in Texas, people have to have hope. They have to believe that you can win. That goes back to even when President Obama began to run, and people didn't, you know, several people didn't believe he could win. So it's like, well, what do we do? What do we give? And at some point, you have to do like Jasmine. Luckily, Jasmine had raised quite a number of dollars before really taking off. I mean, she had proven that what she was doing, something about what she was doing was working. But you just have to be dedicated to the process. I knew when I ran, it was very difficult, but I also said that we cannot continue to just stay out of these races. The bottom line, for us to reach our communities, we don't need the same amount of dollars that some other candidates need who have not engaged our communities. I can walk in some communities and they know me. Why? Because this is not my first rodeo with them. Why? Because when they call me and I can help, I do what I can. to do that. And so that always, I think, gives candidates the upper hand. And so what may cost you $1,200 for a voter, it may only cost, it may cost a lot more. And I give an example. When I got into the race for the lieutenant governor's race, I studied that race. And by that time, I had traveled across the state of Texas several times as vice chair. The candidate that was in the race at the time had ran already twice. He ran, and on the second race, it was a Black gentleman in the race, Michael Cooper, who raised, I don't even know if it was $5,000, but he got within, tens of thousands of votes in between. My point, the other gentleman had raised over $1 million. Now, I'm not going to say, Glynda, that you don't need money to run these races, because that would not be smart. And I definitely don't want that to be the sound bite. We know we need funds. But the reality is, when you go to some of these places and you can really, really run this race in the state of Texas, you have the funding, you have the infrastructure, you really can do the turnout that some others have not proven that they can do. And it helps to have competitive races. We had competitive races, and we had candidates of color just about in many of those races, not all of those races. But we can't, let money be the factor that we don't get in this, because when I ran, the talk was, well, can she do it? My response was, no one else has. Why can't I? And when they try, they don't get, can they do it? And they close their pockets. They get, can they do it? And they still give them a little something. And my God, what we've been able to do, Black women, with a little something, I'm going to stop there. And so, we have to run our race, and in hopes that, people get on, I would call the bandwagon. And I just admire Jasmine, because she did it. And, as we all know, she's a total different elected official than who I love dearly, EBJ. They two different styles, two different ways, two different tones, and I just admire her for running her race in spite of.
So what should we still be paying attention to? I think from two perspectives here in Texas, like what should we be watching? If it was not for a Jasmine Crockett and an increase in turnout, I don't think Colin Allred would be in a runoff. And so there is definitely some conversations around talking about what her increase in the electorate did for down ballot races and other federal races across the state. And I look forward to that, making sure we stand firm in that narrative. But also we shouldn't abandon the state, because we've proven some touch points. And so what should we be looking for in Texas?
I think that's a good question. And let me just say this. When James Tellerico got in the race, people did not ask, why is he entering the race? And there was already a candidate who happened to be Colin Allred. Whether you have a critique of him or not, he was still in the race, an established person in the race.
Former
and no one asked
member.
that question when Tellerico got in the race. So I'm sorry, I had to get that out.
Yeah. So there's a race, and then you go enter race and gender.
Yeah. So now, great question. And I think this is where, great organizations like Higher Heights come in. We can't stop the work. We have to stay in Texas. Wherever you can, talk to Texans, you talk to Texans. Before the race, within 2 days, we called a meeting. And I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Glynda. I think I may have sent it to you. Word them off. Hey, we called it Cold Black. We need to get on this call, and we need to figure out, is there anything that we could do to continue to push out this vote, and to let people know that we have Black on the ballot. It's on the ballot. If you are in Dallas, it's on the ballot. If you're in Houston, it's on the ballot. If you're in Bexar County, it's on the ballot. If you're in East Texas, it's on the ballot. And I really think that helped morale. And of course, Jasmine Crockett got on the call, and it was wonderful. We cannot stop doing that type of work. I love when Black women win, and we need it in Texas. It's so large, Glynda, that we have to figure out, how do we break this state up and identify the paths to win. We know the other party works the local, they work every position is important to them. And I think I hate to say take a strategy out of their book because we already had strategy. I think we need to take another look at what we've been doing. And we cannot stop. We need to be organized so that we are organized and that we can mobilize to move out immediately. We just don't have the privilege of getting in and, figuring out, Glynda, like the first 3 weeks is who you need to call. You call Glynda to say, do you have 10 people I can call? No, I think that there needs to be some list out there. I think that there needs to be some calls, whether they're quarterly calls, even if it's just to have conversations like we're doing, even if it's just to highlight what positions are. Let's think about how much money you need to bring in if you run certain kind of elections. We think of things like candidate training, but what can we do to put maybe some informality around training while at the same time building a network, building a base so that I won't have to cold call Glynda to say, will you support me? What is the endorsement process like? And these are the things that organizations like yours who've been doing the work, and you know it nationally, you know it statewide, you know this. What can we do to stay connected in and out of election season, in and out of a campaign season?
365-day engagement. And more importantly, what does this democracy look like in the next 250 years? So thank you, Dr. Carla Braley, for joining us. Thank you for being a Black woman who leads, and look forward to your continued engagement on Sunday Brunch with Higher Heights.
Thank you. Thank you for doing the work.
Thank you to all of our guests today. Thank you to Congresswoman Sidney Gallagher Dove. Thank you to the Black women professors and academics who've joined us, Dr. Nadia Browne, Dr. Christine Slaughter, and Dr. Carla Braley. We appreciate each of you taking the time to join us and help break down what's important in this moment. This is exactly why we brunch, to stay informed, to stay connected, and to move forward together with intention. And thank you to everyone watching today, especially those who are joining us to celebrate International Women's Day with us. And thank you for spending a little bit of your time celebrating my birthday. I'm getting ready to head out for my own very own brunch with my family and friends, but thank you for joining us. Before we go, we have one more thing to leave you with. Highlights from Reverend Jesse Jackson's celebration of life. Had an opportunity to fly to Chicago. Black leaders from across the country and across the globe came together to celebrate the life and legacy of Reverend Jesse Jackson. So many stories of how he directly or indirectly impacted, inspired, and helped to invest in this generation and many generations of organizers, leaders, elected leaders. So we leave you this Sunday with the reflections from the celebration of life well lived. So rest in power, Reverend Jesse Jackson.
So let me just say, I predicted a lot about what's happening right now. I'm not into saying I told you so, but we did see it coming. But what I did not predict is that we would not have Jesse Jackson with us right now to help us get through this.
It may be tempting for some to compromise with power and grab what you can, or even for good people to maybe just put your head down and wait for the storm to pass. But this man, Reverend Jesse Louis Jackson, inspires us to take a harder path. His voice calls on each of us to be heralds of change, to be messengers of hope, to step forward and say, send me. Wherever we have a chance to make an impact, whether it's in our school, or our workplaces, or our neighborhoods, or our cities. Not for fame, not for glory, or because success is guaranteed, but because it gives our life purpose.
You know, Jesse kept hope alive for us in his lifetime. And we've got to continue to do it in our lifetime for our children, because there's nothing beyond our capacity when we work together. Nothing, nothing, nothing. So stand up and finish his job.
We did not always agree, but I'll tell you one thing. He made me a better president when I got in office. Because he was always pushing on things. And he knew that change came from the outside in and sometimes from the inside out.
Every single person in here has a Jesse Jackson story. The time he shook your hand, the time he prayed for you, the time he held you up, the time he prayed the funeral for somebody that you know, the time he was at the hospital for you, the time, Roland, when you lost your job and he prayed you to a new course of existence. Everybody has, Sister Waters, their own Jesse Jackson story.